PSG were the better side, but we shouldn't overlook the Thomas Partey factor in that. This is not done. This is 1-0 and it's half-time.
The Emirates was a cauldron of white noise in which Arsenal's work rate bordered on mania, but no amount of noise and fury are an adequate substitute for class. Those were the words of the Sun's chief sports writer Dave Kidd after PSG took a huge step towards a Champions League final with a 1-0 win at Arsenal in the semi-final first leg. I'm Will Pugh, and joining me in the Tactics Exposed studio with a metaphorical iron helmet to protect himself from further attacks from the Tin Hat Brigade is Sun Sports tactical guru Dean Scoggins. Dino, the Gooners were not happy with you after last week's show in the comments previewing the big game. Are you going to upset them again this week?
Well, I think PSG proved most of it right, I think, in the first 3 minutes. But yeah, look, we said how PSG were going to play. I wasn't trying to upset any Arsenal fans. We said how they're going to play, and that's how they played. So let's take a bit of a look at what they did. And as usual, my 5 points. Number one, we're going ooh la la. We're going a bit French, but it's Ousmane Dembele and how brilliant he was. Number two, Timber. How he fell down that side and the game against Lewis-Skelly, difficult to say, I know. Number three, un petit frère, a little bit more French for you, my little friend in midfield, Vitinia, who I talked about in that preview show, what he did to break up Arsenal's midfield. And that leads into oh dear for Odegaard, who had an anonymous evening on a night where you want your captain to be front and centre, and we'll look at why that was. And then number five, Raya Hope, not just his saves, both goalkeepers made great saves, let's be fair, but the long balls from Raya were really effective in this game, and it might be something they take into Paris.
Listen, we'll do your in-depth tactical breakdown in a minute, Dino, but just brief summary up top. It was a really good game to watch, first of all. And for a first leg, I thought there were a lot more chances than you usually expect. It could have been 3-3 with the saves that both goalkeepers make, hitting the woodwork, countless times. Arsenal's disallowed goal, of course. Just briefly, how did you sort of see the whole thing?
Well, it went kind of the way I was expecting, and obviously after the comments, how I was hoping it would go. But I thought PSG were the better side, and their plan came off better. But we shouldn't overlook the Thomas Partey factor in that, and him missing. That'll be big for the second leg, which we'll come to in the next show when we look at the second leg. But yeah, I thought that, both goalkeepers made great saves. I think the last 10 minutes was key, because if PSG had taken one of those late two chances, we would be talking about a real uphill struggle for Arsenal. But they stayed in it. They created chances of their own as well. And as you say, it was a great watch.
Less than 2 minutes, and I can feel the Arsenal energy coming already. Donnarumma made some world-class saves as well. They had the goal disallowed. They're going to be coming for you again. Right, ooh la la, Ousmane Dembele. Like you say, Dino, fair play to you, because 4 minutes in to the game, it was like PSG had watched Tactics Exposed and were like, that's a good idea, even though they were already doing it, as you highlighted. And Arsenal, unfortunately, were not, because they got undone by exactly one of the ways you said that PSG would attack last week.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I didn't know which of the midfield three would drop into the defensive position, as it was most regularly Vitinia, very early on. As I said, how they'll play out. Hakimi will move up into midfield or onto the wing, and that's what he did. Vitinia came into the back three to start the move off, which meant Nuno Mendes could move slightly wide, and they created that diamond out wide. They drew on the press. Then it went into midfield where Dembele had come deep, where there's no midfield anymore, and he could turn and go. And they did it 4 or 5 times. It wasn't just for the goal, it was 4 or 5 times. And one of the things I need to highlight is what Arsenal didn't work out until really half-time, which, to be honest, was a bit disappointing, is that one of the reasons for it, I mentioned in the preview show, was if you play with 2 flat midfielders, Rice and Marino, and they get dragged out because of those PSG wingers, straight away you can see the space is there for that false 9, Dembele, to come in between and receive the ball. He was brilliant in the first half, Dembele, and just coming into those areas where he can't be marked, and it's like Saliba and Kiwior.
And you're talking those deep areas,
absolutely,
sort of
coming away from the back four.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Arsenal have got a decision to make. We've talked in previous shows about defenders jumping out, and going out with the striker. perhaps one of them should have gone out with him.
So let's just take it back. We're talking about the goal first of all. It comes from Kvaratskhelia out wide on the left. He's sort of one-on-one with Timber as PSG have broke from deep. Dembele just hovers on the edge of the box.
I'm talking before that, though.
Okay,
I'm talking even before that. Before it even gets to that point, that when the ball's played into midfield to him from the left-back area, into Dembele, then somebody's got to go out with him, or someone could and should go out with him, because from there, he can't be given the freedom of the Emirates to turn in midfield. But because the midfielders have split...
Because Marino's up top.
Marino's pushed up and Rice has gone out to cover out wide, because we talked about those diamond shapes out wide for PSG where they play out. There's this space in the middle, and Dembele comes into it. And actually, the Arsenal back four aren't marking anyone. That's not kind of their fault, because that's the way PSG's set up. But one of them really should come out. But then to move on to your point, when you've lost the ball in that transitional area and then you've got Dembele running at you...
Which Arteta hates.
And that was the way of them playing. It's then the decision-making after that was really pretty poor. Because as you say, Dembele plays it wide to Kvaratskhelia, who holds the wide position. The first thing to say is that Timber stays very narrow, OK? So that gives Kvaratskhelia loads of space to attack into with the ball. Two schools of thought here. Timber's protecting the box, maybe, so he shouldn't go out. But then Saliba maybe could send him out because Saliba's behind him, OK?
This is sort of as the ball's playing...
This is from Dembele to Kvaratskhelia, right? And then the second thing is, when Kvaratskhelia actually gets towards the corner of the box, Timber's in a good position. And he's sort of squared him up. Declan Rice then is on Dembele, who, let's not forget, scores the goal. Then Declan Rice makes the decision that I need to double up with Timber on Kvaratskhelia. Not the worst decision in the world.
One of the best wingers in the world. We saw against Aston Villa, Kvaratskhelia in a very similar position. Rather than passing, he takes on the outside and smashes it in the corner. He's dangerous both ways.
So one of them's got to double up. Whether it should be Rice or whether it should be Saliba is a debate, because Saliba's actually not marking anyone, because Kyrgios's got, I think it's Gomez in the box. Nunes in the box, maybe. One of the other two, anyway. But then Marino, who has been upfield pressing and has been the press has been beaten, so he's charging back.
He was high up the pitch.
He was really high, but he actually gets back into the area before Ousmane Dembele has the shot. So if Rice has gone over, if Rice just moves out of a space, Marino's got to get back into that space to be occupied. And we can see it from the picture. Rice has gone over and Marino's in the area. Right? And Trossard, who's playing up front, has almost got back to him. So between Rice, Saliba and Marino, they've got it wrong. And look, let's not take anything away from the finish. It was absolutely sensational, the finish.
If you look at it, Dean, to be fair, right, if anyone's due criticism there, I think it's easy to have a go at Declan Rice when, in fact, he's probably least at fault, because if he stays on Dembele and then he leaves Timber, who, well, like you say, was too narrow, so should have been out to him earlier, unless it's a tactic, Arteta said, he either stays and marks Dembele and leaves the primary danger, i.e. the man who's got the ball, one of the best wingers in the world, up against Timber. So he goes, and then you've got to trust one of your teammates to do the filling in behind. So who's at fault there, really? Timber for being too narrow, and then Marino ultimately for not shutting Dembele down.
I think you're right, because Rice is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Right? You go one or the other. But I think Marino's the one who doesn't do the midfielder's job when his mate, his other player in midfield, has gone over to do a cover job. You have to cover him. There was an occasion in the second half, or may have even been the end of the first half, where Arsenal had a sort of penalty shout. It wasn't because he won the ball, but that was because the midfield player has got back inside the attacker from exactly that position, and that's what they should have done. The other thing I want to show as well, or just highlight, is the little sidestep that Dembele does. Because actually, do Trossard and Marino think that Dembele is going to come to them before the ball comes, but then he does this little sidestep to his left, which means the ball gets played and he can whip it. Brilliant goal, 3 or 4 minutes in, wonderful start from PSG, and they had Arsenal all over the place tactically.
Absolutely. There's a big old gap, to be fair, though, that we just saw on that screen between Marino. I don't think that's one sidestep's worth, is it? Listen, Dino, Timber! Jurrien Timber, we spoke about him a bit already just in terms of the goal, but you weren't that impressed.
No, I wasn't, and he had a really tough night. I mean, he committed 4 fouls in the first 20 minutes and didn't get a yellow card, and the referee was very, very poor for both teams. Let's get that out there straight away. I don't think he ruined the game, but he didn't help the game as a spectacle. But what we talked about again in the preview show was how PSG make you isolate your fullbacks. They make you get dragged out with their wingers, or if Hakimi pushes up on the right, they make you get dragged out. And it's very difficult decision-making. Do you go and press Kvaratskhelia and then he whips it round the corner against you and you might commit a foul, which Timber did? Or do you just hang off slightly and allow him to turn and face? I talk about defensive distance. You need to be close enough where you're not going to foul him, but not too close where you're going to leg him up, but not too far away that he's going to turn and face you and then run at you. Timber had a very, very difficult time, but it wasn't just his fault, OK? It was because PSG's midfield make a 3 or 4 man, that diamond shape, that 4-man diamond shape again. And Arsenal's midfield were a bit kind of, I don't really know who should be going across and blocking that lane. So what happened is Saka did a really good job. Didn't do much going forward, Saka, which we'll come on to in a sec. But he did a really good job after Timber's fouls to then come across and screen in front of Timber. And you could see Arteta on the touchline saying to Saka, come off the wing and come in front of him. And we'll show Saka's average position, which is
this was interesting, wasn't it?
much narrower than you would normally expect Saka to be, because you want him up that right-hand side. But because he knows that Timber's having a bad afternoon, or a tough afternoon anyway, against a world-class player, he's got to come in front and help him out. And he did do that, but it still meant that then from an attacking, when Arsenal win the ball back point of view, Saka's not in the position you want him to be, which is taking the ball on the run from the right-hand side.
From right on the
touchline, running into that space with that amazing touch direction that Saka has, where the ball comes in, he looks where the player is and he just pushes it beyond him with his first touch and makes the defence turn around on themselves. Nuno Mendes had a relatively easy afternoon against Bukayo Saka, who is one of the best players in the world as well. But because Saka was picking the ball up, we'll show their attack zones, OK? PSG attack very balanced. Third, right, centre and left, OK? Arsenal, unsurprisingly, 40-odd% on the right-hand side because they go through Saka and Odegaard.
Exactly,
okay?
and that always happens.
That always happens. But now we'll convert that and show where the shots came from. And only 10% of Arsenal's shots came from that Saka channel because he was being forced in field when they're set up to defend, and then PSG stopped him getting the ball in that wide position where Vitinia or one of the other 2 midfield players, Ruiz especially, comes across and blocks off Saka's run. So it wasn't that Saka wasn't very good when he had the ball. He was his usual, very dangerous, quick. And look, PSG got away with one in the corner where he apparently fouled Nuno Mendes and he never touched him. So that would have been a great chance. But they starved Saka in the position that he likes to pick up. And that was because really Timber was struggling.
Un petit frère, Dino. You're really putting me through my paces when it comes to French this week. Vitinia in the middle of the park for PSG. Talk to me.
Yeah, Petit, they've probably not seen a midfield display that good since Emmanuel Petit at Arsenal. But yeah, the little man and the little friend in midfield, he was absolutely fantastic, right? I often talk when, we're watching any level of football, grassroots football, amateur football, semi-pro, all the way up to this very, very top level, about midfielders playing the game and running the game at their pace. This game, for the first half an hour at least, was played only at the pace Vitinia wanted. If you wanted to slow the game down, he came into the back 3 and took the ball off the goalkeeper, played a couple of bounce passes, and then when he saw Arsenal's press get drawn out, as we talked about in the preview show, bang, let's go, lads. And then he went up. He controlled the tempo, the ball. He didn't actually have as much, when I looked at the stats afterwards, he didn't have actually as much of the ball as I was expecting him to. He had a similar amount of touches to Odegaard. But, and Odegaard was anonymous, which we'll come on to in a minute. But it was the areas of the field he got the ball, and also he's that bounce man. So when we talk about the diamonds again for PSG, they form those positions outside. You've got to have someone in midfield, and with Ruiz as well, and him, they've got these players who you completely trust when they've got pressure behind them. And in the build-up to the goal, they nearly gave the ball away in that 26 or 28 pass move.
Yep.
And Vitinia just got his body in the way and pinged the ball backwards into the defence, which then went along the back of the defence and then into Dembele to score. And it's that sort of link-up play at this level that is unbelievable. The other thing he does is it was like they had 12 men. Because when they're 3 at the back, you've got 3 Arsenal men pressing them.
Yep.
He makes it 4, so they're 4v3. Then when the ball goes into midfield and Arsenal drop into that 4-4-2 shape out of possession, he makes it a 5 in midfield because for PSG, because you've got Hakimi up on one side, Vitinia comes in. And then they attack going the other way, and there's 5 going forward with only 4 defenders, and he's the one joining in. Yeah. So he's the overload man in each of those positions. He was the best player on the pitch, and especially in the first half. And Arsenal have got to find a way to get hold of him in the second leg, otherwise they're going to struggle again.
It's very similar. You need an engine to do that, don't you? It's similar to like Szoboszlai, as you were saying that. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, from the overload positions, absolutely. It's almost like McAllister on the ball. Yeah. And then Szoboszlai off the ball.
But positionally, he's working up and down the pitch almost all game, isn't he? Pretty much in straight lines in one channel.
Absolutely.
But he's involved in all the phases of play.
And he joins the play up. And again, in the preview show, we talked about the sort of number of diamonds across the field. When play gets out of its structure, as we said, PSG are a rigid setup, but they're fluid within that setup. And that means players can move from different cones, if you like, different positions to where each one wants to be. And Vitinia is a genius at identifying where the missing piece is in that little jigsaw, and he goes in and there, and then you can give him the ball. Fantastic stuff.
He's come a long way since he was struggling to get in the team at Wolves, has he not?
Just a bit.
Dino, ode dear, ode dear, ode dear. I'm not sure whether I'm saying that because of the title of this section or from Martin Odegaard's performance. Which one?
I'm not quite sure what's gone on with Odegaard in the last 10, 12 games, really. His level has dropped off. When Saka first came back in, it was like, oh, the band's back together. The two of them playing as they would. And he does rely on Saka stretching the game to give him that little pocket of space. But he had a really off night on the biggest night that Arsenal needed him of the season. And look, for me, Declan Rice should be captain, and it's kind of irrelevant who wears the armband because it's about how you carry yourself on the field. And Arsenal have got leaders all over the place. Raya, Saliba, Rice, and
Odegaard's
Odegaard.
a lead by example.
Absolutely,
man,
And Bukayo Saka's the same. So it doesn't really matter that he's the captain.
And he triggers the press.
He does. But that was kind of the problem, and that's what I'm going to come on to. He got that wrong against PSG, and in the first 10 minutes, where PSG were getting all of the ball, it was a lot down to Odegaard getting that trigger movement wrong. And as I said, they follow Odegaard, okay? They've always done it. He's been brilliant at it for 2 or 3 seasons, and that's why they set up in a 4-4-2, because Odegaard is part of the 2, and when he decides he's going to go, or the striker should go, whoever that is, Havertz previously, Trossard in this game, and Marino the last few weeks, they go as a 2, 3 or 4 players. They follow Odegaard, okay? In this, he kept going at the wrong times because Vitinia was dragging him into positions that Odegaard didn't want to be. And that meant they all come into one side of the pitch. And the number of times you could throw a blanket over 8 players, 4v4, of both teams in either the right-back position or the left-back position. And that leaves this big open space in midfield where the first goal came from. It happened in the second half as well, where they just got the press wrong. And, it was Odegaard. It was like waiting to pounce, but then by the time you pounce, you've gone too late. So the timing was just slightly off. And look, they'll work on it. They'll improve it. And Odegaard won't be as bad as that 2 legs running, but he just had a really off night. And also the other thing that we should note is that PSG identified how difficult he is and how difficult a player he is. But because Trossard often drops into spaces or drops out wide, that allowed Pacho, the centre-back, to go out and engage Odegaard because he had nobody to mark the other way. And much the way that I was saying about Arsenal before, they didn't commit Kiwior or Saliba out of the back 4 to go and press a midfielder. PSG did, and that starved Odegaard of space. And actually, the PSG chance for Bradley Barcola in the second half was like the sort of epitome of everything that went in the game. And it took them quite a while in the second half, PSG, to get that. Yeah, when he dragged it across the face of goal and really should have scored. Yeah, just before the other chance where they hit the bar. But you look, Arsenal had a good spell up to that point. But actually then PSG got Arsenal in a position over on that wing that they wanted. And it came because they were overloaded one side, Arsenal, and Odegaard lost the ball. And it came over to the other side of the pitch. And then PSG got in that diamond shape again, exactly as we said in the preview show. And they then bounce it in between them and play up that channel. And you thought, how have they got more players on one side of the pitch when they've just dispossessed them on the other side of the pitch? And Odegaard got sort of stuck in this half number 8, half number 10, not really midfield, not really wide, not really forward position, and he wasn't impacting the game at all. So, yeah, he had an off night and he'll need to be a lot better. He will be better next week.
Dino, after points 1 to 4, for your sake alone in the comments this week, I'm glad that this one is Raya of Hope. An Raya of hope for Arsenal going into the second leg because they are only 1-0 down, to be fair. The tie is still wide open. There was lots of positivity, faux or otherwise, after the game from the Arsenal camp. Understandably, they're only 1-0 down, going into the away leg nonetheless. Raya of hope, we'll go through this one and then perhaps we'll see if we can see any other positives for the Goonies.
I'm not for a minute saying that they're done here. Not for a minute. You know, they did really well to stay in the game. The Raya hope, the save from Desiree Doué in the first half where he goes down to his right so quickly, like, I think, you know, unless you go and regularly watch football live in the stadium, you don't realise how hard that shot is to save and how quickly he went down. But Arsenal had their chances as well, right? So Donnarumma makes 2 world-class saves.
Definitely.
You know, and it comes from positions that we're going to go into the preview show and talk about that ahead of the second leg. So I don't want to step on that too much. But, you know, they came from positions where Arsenal can get at PSG. But the other one I wanted to talk about was the number of times where Arsenal had a free kick just inside their own half, where either a PSG player has made a foul in transition, another thing they're very good at, or Arsenal did well playing out and got brought down, or PSG were offside. And Raya came up and took all the set pieces, almost up to the halfway line. It was old school. You don't really see that anymore. You know, right, we're going to put that in. And look, people may criticise it as a long ball tactic. I don't care.
No.
It's the right tactic. It was absolutely the right thing to do. Because of the one occasion I think we saw where PSG were really, really vulnerable was to either the diagonal long ball or the bouncing ball, where Marquinhos and Pacho and the 2 fullbacks, where normally Hakimi's somewhere up the field and gets caught out by that diagonal ball, and they came from Raya's excellent distribution. He did it 3 or 4 times in the first half, and I thought, do that more, second half, do it more. And he did, and they should have scored 1 from it. They had a couple of half chances from others, and then they forced corners, and then, of course, we know how dangerous they are from corners, and they forced the game back. So it was good from Raya, from a distribution point of view. And what you don't want is players thinking, we're 1-0 down, take a quick free kick on the halfway line. Don't do that, because PSG are then going to nick it in transition. What you want is, right, take the sting out of the game for a minute. It's only 1-0. Let's put the ball in an area that they don't want to. So as well as both goalkeepers making excellent saves, both goalkeepers were very, very good with their distribution as well, because Donnarumma will have it under pressure. And as I said, again in the preview show, they want to be inviting them on. A lot of the play will be played in PSG's box, along the line of PSG's box. The attack zones, there was actually more of the ball in PSG's third than there was in Arsenal's. But that's because PSG are calling it on. They want it on. And also, Raya's distribution is good in putting it into areas PSG don't want to be. So another intriguing thing for the second leg. But the goalkeepers were both excellent. And yeah, look, I think that the Thomas Partey factor comes into it hugely. And this is not done. I'm not saying this is done. I'm just saying that what happened last night.
Of course. Well, look, we will be doing a preview show for the second leg, so keep your eye on Sunsport's YouTube channel, looking to drop that before the weekend. Dino will be back as always. But Dino, if there are Arsenal fans watching this going, come on, all you've done is talked about PSG and how good they were. It's only 1-0. We did some positive things. We had some chances. On another night, we could have scored and won 3-1. What do you think, just very briefly to wrap up, some things that Arsenal did particularly well that you liked the look of?
Well, they carried the ball well, which I said they'd have to do, and Rice did that a few times, and we'll see more of that in the second leg. And, and they got out of those positions to get it to Trossard and Martinelli a couple of times. I also think that I probably should have mentioned this earlier until you even put Miles Lewis-Skelly was excellent again. His 1v1 defending in duels, he's as good as I've seen for years in that position. Hakimi didn't get any joy in a duel against him. He got a lot of joy in running into those positions and then PSG overloading those positions, which we said they do. But Miles Lewis-Skelly, and also where Timber couldn't work out what to do with Kvaratskhelia, Miles Lewis-Skelly did a miles better job on Doué and Hakimi, which then forced Doué in midfield, which meant Lewis-Skelly could go in midfield and invert and then add the numbers in there. So second half, I actually thought Miles Lewis-Skelly did a great job at turning the game a little bit and creating a little bit more compact shape in midfield, which possibly was an Arteta thing second half. But yeah, this is not done. This is 1-0 and it's half-time. So I am not going to say that Arsenal are not going to do it, and I'm now going to go back and watch it all again and see where Arsenal can pick them off in the second leg.